Elden Ring bosses are often considered the best bosses in gaming, but honestly, a lot of them suck. I'm sure you have some bosses in mind that are unfair, cheap, or absolutely terrible. That's why in this video, we're naming and shaming the most hated bosses in Elden Ring. We're gonna be dissecting everything that makes these bosses so hated, from their mechanics to their terrible movesets and more. And I can't think of a boss that better fits all those descriptions better than the Fire Giant. I already know you let out a long groan the second I brought this nuisance up, because I have yet to see even a single Fire Giant defender. One Google search and you find enough dirt on this guy to drop a Kendrick diss. Soulsborne games are known for their engaging combat and realistic swordplay, while I present you the Fire Giant's ankle. I hope you like it because you spend most of the fight attacking it. Yeah, I'm not joking. You're not having a chivalristic trade of blows, or even an epic fight against a great beast. You're literally walloping on a guy's ankle for 10 minutes. You remember those giant forced laborers in Dark Souls 3 everyone hated? Well, it's clear that they took our feedback to heart, because they took the giant chained warrior and made it a main boss. But luckily, the second phase of the boss fight changes his weak spot. It has to be an improvement from his ankle, right? No, it's worse. So much worse. Because one of them is an eye on his chest. Why? We may never know. But what I do know is that he's a giant, and I have no means to reach that eye on his chest. But on the bright side, at least his hands are also a weak spot. But surprise! Those suck too. This guy is so big that when you lock onto his hands and he makes the slightest movement, your camera just gets sent into the stratosphere. But all those problems only apply if you get close enough to hit him. Because when you're not swinging at his ankles, you're just walking. Yep, welcome to Death Stranding 2, because whenever you get close, the Fire Giant rolls away or backs off. What is he even rolling away from here? And his moveset is so annoying. I could talk all day about the overpowered fire magic, or him just randomly starting explosions, but I'm not trying to make this video an hour long. So what I will call out is the fact this guy has a plate that causes whole avalanches. And why is this even an attack? He just randomly has this plate that's capable of creating whole avalanches. Like, what sense does that make? Who can even make plates that big? Does the Giant Clan just specialize in utensils? Ah, yes, eating utensils, a craft we have perfected over the years. These plates are the pride and joy of us giants. So yeah, the Fire Giant sucks, but he isn't even the most hated boss on the list. Some of these bosses are gonna have your blood boiling. But let's take a step away from the main game for a minute, because I'm out for blood on DLC bosses too. Some bosses' quality is more subjective, but our next boss is going band for band with Fire Giant on the most objectively terrible boss design in Elden Ring. It's Commander Gaius. You knew who it was as soon as I said it was DLC. This is another boss with 0 defenders. It's human nature to hate Commander Gaius. Where do I even begin? This was later patched out because of the absurdity of it, but whenever you first enter the boss fight, no wait, no warning, he immediately starts charging at you from across the entire arena. If you've tried to dodge a horseback attack before, you know that you just don't. First time I walked into this fight, I walked in thinking, oh, a boss. Awesome, let's make this first attempt a go, and then I see a whole ass boar charging towards me. I mentally give up and Dark Fantasy by Kanye West starts playing as a boar charges at me in slow motion. So the answer's obvious, right? Just face him on horseback. The problem is horseback fighting is an insanely underdeveloped feature. When fighting on foot, you get light attacks, heavy attacks, crouch attacks, jump attacks, and running attacks, as well as your Ash of War and plenty other tools. But what do you get fighting on horseback? You can attack to your left side or right. You can also do a heavy or light attack. When you design an entire boss fight around a feature so underdeveloped, it's like, why would you do this? You developed all these interesting and dynamic features just to force us into only being able to use a fraction of them for a whole boss fight. That just isn't fun. You might ask, why not fight him on foot? Let me remind you. Giant boar. If you thought Fire Giant moving around was bad, imagine how hard it is to keep up with a man riding a boar for the purpose of transportation. Yeah, if you're not on a horse, you're just not hitting this guy. And he has ranged magic attacks for some reason. Oh, and did I mention he could just float up in the sky and become a drill that smacks into you? What even are these attacks? And the worst part, after you defeat this annoying boss, you finally get to access the area behind him. And what's your reward for slaying such a strong foe? Yep, just scat tree fragments. Literally just look under like 3 trees and you'll find scat tree fragments. This boss fight was not worth it. But do you know who's a boss and who isn't hated? you. The reception on our first video was insane. We blew past our 1,000 subscriber goal. So if you're enjoying this, consider leaving a like and subscribing. Let's see if we can get to 3,000 subs. And if you want to make sure we see your message or support us in a higher capacity, super thanks are always open and hugely appreciated. But speaking of appreciation, our next boss is one that some people love and some absolutely hate. This is probably the second most divisive boss in all of Elden Ring, because our next most hated boss is Malekith. Now this guy is just difficult, like insanely difficult, to the point where there's an argument to be made that it's just too much. Just to start off, the difference between Phase 1 and Phase 2 is so night and day that I can see it being an issue for some people. Beast Cleric is like a coughing baby, and Malekith a nuclear warhead, and that can really discourage some people. You take all this time to learn a boss and you finally get it to second phase, only to find out that the second phase is so different that none of your knowledge is going to carry over, and it's like you walked into the fight for the first time again. Getting a boss to second phase is supposed to be an accomplishment. It's supposed to be that dopamine hit that gives you the juice to keep going at that boss. But when that accomplishment is met with another completely different challenge, it doesn't feel like progress. It feels like regression. This may seem like a dumb criticism to some, but most of the good bosses in this game have a sense of evolution going into their second phase, not a complete change. And on top of that, his attacks are just insane. He absolutely spams you with hardly any attack window that you can make use of. Most people will think the solution is that people just need to get good, but if people are really hating on Malekith because they're bad at the game, then why does he get all this hate? While Dark Eater Midir and Slave Knight Gale are hailed as some of the best bosses in gaming. That's why even though I personally don't hate Malekith, this is totally a perspective worth looking at. But not all bosses are hated because they're challenging or difficult. Some bosses are just so poorly designed that it feels like they're ripped from another game entirely. And that last statement is a little too true for our next boss. Because our next most hated boss is the ulcerated tree spirit. Yup, that thing on your screen is actually a boss. Why does it look like a burrito filled with cranberry? I have no idea, but the art team was definitely out for this one, and the rest of the team must have been out too, because every single aspect of this boss is an afterthought. Seriously though, he actually just breaks some mechanics. Like, you know how the fire giant makes your camera look like a third-degree earthquake? Well, the tree spirit moves around so chaotically that the game can't even stay locked onto him. Yeah. The feature, there to make sure you can keep track of bosses that move around a lot, just breaks sometimes. Because this guy is moving so much. And depending on what version you're facing, the lock-on might be the least of your worries. As you can see, this boss is huge. You would expect a boss like this to have a huge boss arena, but he has this tiny room. Yup. You have to fight this huge-ass worm in what's essentially a closet. He makes the tiniest movement, and you start getting knocked wall-to-wall like this is pinball. And in this room, the camera issue I mentioned earlier is made 2 times worse. And the cherry on top of all this is that he's reused so many times in the game. You're gonna be seeing this guy constantly. And did I mention that he's literally ripped from Dark Souls 3? Yep, he was supposed to be an evolution of the Pus of Man, and ended up getting cut presumably because he sucked. So instead of fixing him, they ripped him from Dark Souls 3 and put him in Elden Ring like 50 different times. Now let's get back to the mainline bosses, because Rykard's design absolutely sucks, and the player base has every reason to hate him. But I gotta give credit where credit is due first. Rykard's arena is so cool. Seriously, walking in there with the lava, the corpses, the giant snake looming, it's peak. You feel like you're getting ready to have the most cinematic fight ever. But then the actual fight starts, and reality sinks in, and you realize this boss sucks. You see that lava? It isn't there to look cool. It's there to make sure you can't even get close enough to hit him. Yup, in a game with melee-based combat, they made a whole boss where you can't even get close to him. And the result is that you can only attack his snake heads, which you don't even have the entire arena to maneuver around, because of that damn lava. But there is an easier way to hit him. You wanna know how? Throw out the build that you spent 100 hours perfecting, because FromSoft decided this fight needs a gimmick weapon. Yup, you have to use a serpent hunting spear conveniently lying in the arena. Forget your katana, your magic, your entire build. You gotta throw all that out just so the game can force you to be a great spear player, because FromSoft knew there was no other way people would use those god-awful weapons. Elden Ring's biggest strength is build variety, and they just toss it in the trash here. It completely invalidates your character for the sake of their set piece. But I'm sure some veterans are beginning to realize that this boss fight sounds familiar, and that's because it's basically Yorm the Giant from Dark Souls 3. but worse. At least the Storm Ruler felt kinda cool and had hella aura, but the Serpent Hunter is just there. It's a copied gimmick that they somehow made worse. And the attacks! When he's not just flailing his snake head around, he's spewing this annoying poison that takes forever to go away. Good luck seeing his next move through that green crap. Then comes Phase 2, which is somehow even more chaotic. Forget finding an opening, because you've got endless waves of exploding skulls everywhere. I can't emphasize enough just how chaotic this second phase is. But I don't need to, because you can just look at the gameplay on the screen right now. It's literally just visual noise. Trying to find a window to hit him with a mandatory gimmick spear between skull explosions and lava splashes doesn't feel like a skill check. It's like you're just getting bullied. The idea of Rykard is cool, the arena looks cool, but the actual fight, it's tied down by a force gimmick weapon, restrictive arena, annoying attacks, and Phase 2 chaos. It definitely earns its spot on the most hated list. But at least Rykard is easy with the Serpent Killer. But the Deathrite Bird in the Consecrated Snowfields is a boogeyman of Elden Ring. I mean, to start, he can just one-shot you. Yeah, even though you're pretty much in the endgame, he can just obliterate your health. We're talking about seemingly random bursts of Ghost Flame that clips you for 90% of your HP. And now you have enough health to get sneezed on and die. This isn't challenging, it's just cheap. And it completely invalidates any attempt to play strategically or defensively. You're constantly on edge, knowing that any stray hit is game over. And speaking of things that make you want to throw your controller, why is this thing constantly flying away? You begin a mortal fight to the death with him, and he just says, I'm gonna do my own thing. You spend half the fight chasing after him as it swoops around the arena, spewing projectiles from a mile away, and the other half praying it decides to land long enough for you to actually hit it. Then there's the combo trapping. This thing doesn't just hit hard, it hits you repeatedly, with attacks that chain together in ways that feel almost inescapable. You get caught in one flurry, and suddenly you're stun-locked, ragdolled, and watching your health bar vanish as you desperately mash dodge. But you know it's already too late. It's not a skill issue, it's a design issue. You're not learning a pattern, you're just praying the RNG gods are on your side this time. Oh, and let's not forget about the grab attack. This thing has a grab that not only deals massive damage, but also has a hitbox that defies all logic. It feels like it can grab you even when you're clearly dodging. It's like the grab has its own gravitational pull, warping space and time just to punish you. And the animation? A slow telegraphed peck that somehow teleports you into its beak from a mile away. It's janky, it's unfair, and it feels like the game is actively mocking your attempts at dodging. And to add insult to injury, the camera sucks on this boss too. This thing is so damn big and moves so erratically that trying to lock into its face, which is its weak spot, makes the camera have a stroke. You're fighting the bird, the camera, and the arena all at once. It's a three-way battle, and you're one hit from dying while all this is happening. The real kicker? This isn't even a new boss design. It's a rehash of the Deathrite birds we've already fought. Just bigger, angrier, and with even more obnoxious attacks. It's like FromSoft took a boss that was already annoying and cranked everything up to 11. Welcome to Elden Ring, where a random bird is the hardest boss in the game. But some bosses aren't hated because they have bad design. Some of the most praised can simultaneously be the most hated. And no boss in Elden Ring, maybe even in any Souls game, splits the community quite like Malenia. You've got legions defending her as a perfectly designed challenge. And then you have, well, seemingly everyone else, calling her unfair, cheap, and the absolute definition of artificial difficulty. But why do they hate her? It's not just because she's hard. No, the frustration, the hate, it all boils down to a few specific, infuriating points that make countless players feel cheated. First and foremost, the biggest complaint about her is always the waterfowl dance. Look, it's visually spectacular, I'll give her that, but for so many players, especially those trying to fight her head-on without cheese strats, this move feels fundamentally broken. The speed, the tracking, the sheer volume of hits, and the almost non-existent startup queue. If you're close, it's brutal. Dodging it consistently, particularly point blank, often requires methods that feel completely unintuitive compared to the rest of the game's combat flow. Runaway patterns, perfectly timed pot throws, or even relying on a specific Ash of War like Bloodhound Step. It feels less like learning a dance and more like looking up cheat codes, which is why so many players label it unfair. It shatters the rhythm and punishes aggression in a way that feels cheap. Then there's a mechanic that pours salt directly into the wound, the lifesteal. Malenia heals herself every single time the blade connects, not just when she deals damage to you. Oh no. She even heals if she hits you with your shield and while you're blocking 100% of the damage. And she also heals if she hits your Spirit Ash. This feels insulting to many players. It actively punishes defensive strategies like blocking, which are perfectly viable elsewhere. It makes every tiny mistake, every blocked hit, feel disproportionately punishing, because you're not just losing progress, you're actively giving her health back. It drags the fight out, multiplying the opportunities for her to unleash Waterfowl Dance again, creating this demoralizing feedback loop of frustration. Combine that healing with her relentless aggression, her surprisingly high damage, and her ability to sometimes animation cancel attacks into that punishing kick, and you have an encounter where safe openings feel incredibly rare and fleeting for many playstyles. The margin for error is razor thin, and mistakes aren't just punished with damage. They're punished by undoing your hard-earned progress via healing. I personally enjoy this challenge, but I understand why the combination of these elements make her so hated for a large portion of the player base. It pushes less skilled players from their preferred builds and forces them towards very specific counter strategies. Bleed builds, stunlock methods, sleep pots, powerful summons, just to overcome mechanics that feel fundamentally unfair or poorly communicated compared to the rest of Elden Ring's otherwise brilliant design. It's less tough but fair, and more tough because of specifically arguably broken mechanics. She's an icon, no doubt, a legend even, but is she fair? The community is violently split, and the sheer volume of hatred directed her way earns her a guaranteed, high-ranking spot on this list, whether you love her or not. But most bosses aren't as divisive as Melania. Some are just mid as hell, like our next most hated boss, all open world dragons. I just put all of them in one section because most of the complaints are pretty similar. To start off, who at FromSoft decided that the main opponent in these fights shouldn't be a dragon, but this broken ass camera? Fighting any large enemy in these games is already a wrestling match with a lock-in, but these dragons take it to a whole new level. You lock onto the head, its weak spot supposedly, and the camera just has a seizure the second the dragon flaps his wings. So you unlock, try to manually track this massive beast whipping around, and promptly get blasted by fire you couldn't even see coming. Because that's what lock-on was supposed to help you with. And you have a hard time locking onto anything else, so it's just part 2 of swinging at someone's ankles till they die. And that's assuming that the dragon even stays on the ground long enough for you to try and hit it. Half of these fights feel like you're playing Chase on Torrent across half the continent. Dragon lands, you gallop over, maybe get 2 hits in, and whoosh, it's airborne again. And then it circles around till it decides where to shoot its fire. Then you gotta wait, dodge the flames, and chase it down again. It's tedious, it's boring, and it's not very skibbity of FromSoft. And then you can't even hit him, because his head is whipping around like a lunatic or hovering 20 feet up. Then you're just stuck whacking away at their legs that take hardly any damage. It's so unsatisfying. We have these incredible weapon arts, intricate combos, and the optimal strategy is just spamming light attack on their foot. And the arenas, oh god, the arenas. Heal's Lake is fine, whatever, but Ezekiel's and Kaled? Trying to fight him on that slanted tree-infested mess where he constantly gets stuck on rocks is so annoying. Or you can try dodging Adula's magic spam amongst the ruins where the dragon itself seems confused about where it can land. These open world environments work against the boss fight, causing clipping and breaking the already terrible lock-on. Then there's the sheer repetition. How many times do we need to fight slightly different flavors of flying dragons? After the second or third one, the spectacle wears off, and it's just a chore. The core moveset is identical. It's the definition of lazy boss design padding out the open world. Look, dragons should be cool. Flying, breathing fire, the whole spectacle should be epic. But the combination of fighting the camera, the constant tedious chasing, the unsatisfying ankle-biting combat, and the sheer repetition just makes most of these open-world encounters more frustrating than fun. But now we're getting into bosses so terrible and annoying that these should be used as examples of what not to do with a boss. These next bosses are the most hated in all of Elden Ring, and the first one I'm tackling is the Erdtree Burial Watchdog in the Impaler's Catacombs. Seriously, who thought this was a good idea? The watchdog itself is the same slow, clunky statue we fought 1,000 times, but this time it's got friends. 4 little gremlin-fanged imps that turn this fight into absolute hell. These things are fast, they spam attacks constantly, and they're impossible to ignore. You're trying to focus down one imp, but the watchdog decides to do its floaty ground pound thing right on top of you. Forget learning attack patterns, you're just desperately trying not to get stun locked, while a giant stone cat does a cha-cha slide across the room. The fact that the community's best advice is to use summons to distract them, or hit the boss with crystal darts so it attacks the imps, tells you everything you need to know about the core design here. This boss is just fundamentally broken. And now for the most hated boss in all of Elden Ring, the boss that makes every player's blood boil, and an ugly smear on an otherwise great game. The Godskin duo is the most hated boss in all of Elden Ring. First off, let's just acknowledge the fact that the runback is annoying as hell. You've got these knights trying to murderize you at every corner. Good luck stepping into the fight with full health. This fight hasn't even started and you're already annoyed. But then you step inside. And what profound climactic challenge awaits? Oh, it's just the same two bosses you already fought earlier. But now, they're slapped together in one room. Peak creativity right there. And this isn't some finely tuned dance like Ornstein and Smo, where one is fast and aggressive, and the other is slow and heavy, which creates interesting dynamics. No, it's just chaos. Both the Apostle and the Noble are hyper-aggressive simultaneously. You're desperately trying to dodge the Apostle's flurry of black flame, while the Noble is revving up his infamous 20-minute long rolling attack. There's no synergy, no ebb and flow. It's just two bosses trying to kill you at the same time, often attacking in ways that make dodging feel literally impossible. But people don't just hate the Noble because he looks like a pyrocynical OC. Nope. It's because of his roll attack. Sometimes the Godskin Noble just randomly decides to become a giant sphere and starts rolling at you. You're sprinting and dodging, but he still hits you. Or he clips you against the wall for an instant death. It's unpredictable, it's visually messy, and it's just not fun. Meanwhile, the Apostle isn't any better. He's fast, his weapon has deceptive reach, and he just loves spamming those black flame projectiles. Especially the second you try to heal. Trying to manage his aggression while keeping track of Gorlock the Destroyer is an absolute nightmare. And the health bar. Oh, the shared health bar. It's such a bafflingly useless mechanic. You finally manage to kill one of them after a successful struggle, expecting a moment of relief. Nope, the other just casually summons their buddy back a few minutes later. Kill them both roughly at the same time? Doesn't matter, one still gets back up. It's just an arbitrary health pool attached to an endless cycle of annoying resurrections. The fight practically screams at you to use summons or sleep pots. The community consensus isn't learn the attack patterns, it's put one to sleep so you can actually fight normally for 10 seconds. When the optimal strategy feels like cheesing the encounter or relying on mimic tier, that's a sign of fundamentally flawed boss design. It's recycled content slammed together without any thought for synergy, creating a mandatory roadblock that feels more like a frustrating chore rather than an epic fight. Easily one of the most hated lazily boss designs FromSoft has ever forced upon us. And that was the most hated bosses in Elden Ring. Did we miss any? Go ahead and tell us in the comments. If you like this video, consider leaving a like and subscribing. Every bit of support goes a long way, and you will officially be a Through the Fog OG. While you're here, you should click on the video on screen to hear the unwritten rules of Elden Ring. It's our first video and you'll love it. And until next time, I'll see you through the fog.